The 2024 NHL Draft Lottery has decided everything, with the San Jose Sharks getting the first overall pick and likely Macklin Celebrini. But outside of that first overall pick with the San Jose Sharks, where does each prospect go inside the first round? Well, today we're going to be going through a full, complete top 23. That's right, even featuring the teams that lost in the first round to see who they could end up selecting in this year's draft. But which prospects go inside my top 23? Who could your team end up selecting in the first round of this year's draft class? Well, make sure you watch till the end as we go through all the scouting reports and all the picks, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey and especially draft content, because there's going to be a lot over the next month that you won't want to miss. Now let's get the 2024 post-lottery mock draft started here today, folks. And going on to the first overall pick, no surprises at this spot with the San Jose Sharks. They will go for Macklin Celebrini, who just brings so much to the table as a future first line center, a Taves-like overall presence with BU this year, 64 points, 38 a games, Hobie Baker Award, was unbelievable in the U20s for Canada, has just been great throughout this entire season, and will be a great overall two-way beast for the Sharks going forward. And on top of Will Smith and William Eklund, that's a pretty good core coming up. And in Smith's case, with Celebrini coming to the fold, those two might both make the jump into the NHL next season, which would be so much fun to watch. But next up, we go into second overall in the Chicago Blackhawks selection. This is one that I have debated a lot this year. I've gone back and forth on different players like Anton Silayev, Cayden Lindstrom for them, but at second overall, I just get this feeling that at this position, they're just going to continue to go best player available like they have throughout the past few years, and in my opinion, for them, that'll end up being Ivan Demidov. To me, the combo of Bedard and Demidov is just too good to pass up, and even though you could go for a D, you could go for other options, to me, in terms of pure potential, pure skill set, Demidov is right up there with Celebrini. I think it could be a better point producer as well than Celebrini if all of that potential hits. He's so electrifying, just has so much going for him offensively, and you can see what he's been able to do in the MHL this year. Just dominance throughout, a 2-point per game in the regular season, just silly numbers for a draft eligible. Demidov could be special, and I think the Blackhawks will realize that. Now we go on to third overall in the Anaheim Ducks, and this is also a spot that I could see them going for anything. I do think a player like Sam Dickinson, in terms of the style of play, fits a lot of what Anaheim needs, but in terms of actual need going forward, I think they could really use some juice on that right side of the defense, especially top end talent, and Artyom Levshunov fits that bill a lot for me, especially with how the Ducks have really drafted recently, going for bigger players. Levshunov does fit that bill, but he brings a lot of electrifying offense, a great skating ability, and aggressiveness that I think Anaheim is really going to love, and I think it'll be interesting to see how he fits long term with that Ducks defense. But on top of already studs like Zellweger and Mintyukov, having that top three locked in, that would be one of the best defenses in the future, on top of a top six that is already looking nasty. And I know some people might say that Anaheim might not draft a D, but when you're looking at the player that Levshunov could be, the potential that he brings, it's hard to pass up on him, even at third overall. Now, I wanted to talk about today's sponsor and BetUS as well before we get into the rest of the top 23. So many picks to go, but I wanted to talk about their series prices right now, because you can go through every single one of the second round matchups right now. And right now you got Avalanche, Stars, and the Stars, even though they lost game one, I still believe in them. They're plus 170 right now. You could put $20 down to win 34. In my opinion, the Stars, I still think are going to win this series in the end. I still believe, baby, it's going to happen. And if you guys sign up to BetUS today, it's a great opportunity with all the playoffs going on right now, and helps the channel tremendously when you do. And thank you to BetUS for sponsoring today's video. Going on to fourth overall in the Blue Jackets, I think Columbus has so many options here. I think a player like Z Buell will be absolutely electric there, but I think they'd want to go for a left D like an Anton Silayev, and I think they're a little bit log jammed in that position right now. So I think they will go for a forward, and I still think a center makes a lot of sense. And even though I had floated Konsta Helenius in the past, I think if he's available, there's no way the Blue Jackets pass up on Cayden Lindstrom. The player he can be, the potential of his size, the skating, the skill, and the trio of those aspects, Lindstrom could be so good in the future if you're able to give him some patience. He didn't put up the monster numbers you'd want to see in the WHL compared to players like Berkly Cattojn, but again, it's about the long game. And even though I think this would have been a perfect pick for the Habs, for instance, right after, I think for the Blue Jackets looking for top end potential, a top two center core of Fantilli and Lindstrom would be hard to pass up on. Next up, we go on to 5th overall in the Montreal Canadiens, and this is one that I think it might be a little bit easier to pinpoint compared to prior years, at least with what we're hearing, especially if Demidov and Lindstrom are gone. I think there's only a few options that would really entice the Habs. I think it would be a Beckett Seneca, a Zane Parekh could also be in the mix, but I think at this spot, they will go for Tij Iginla. It just makes so much sense for what Montreal has drafted recently, what they prioritize, like we talked about with the winning character, with the intensity in their games. Iginla just has so much of that, and also still a lot of potential, in my opinion, to be a great top 6 power forward. Even though he's not the biggest in the world, he plays like he's huge and gets pretty good results from it. He was great at the U18 World Juniors, fantastic in the second half for Kelowna. He just brings so much with his shot, with the forechecking ability that I think Montreal is going to love. And even though I think it will be a slight reach at 5th overall for what he could be, he's going to be a good NHLer, and that's a risk they might be willing to take. At 6th overall, and the Utah Yetis, I'm still going to call them right now, they have the same management as the Arizona Coyotes did, the same GM, same whole system, same scouting department. So to me, I think we're going to see kind of still what the Coyotes were drafting recently in the Utah Yetis, and I think they will end up selecting Anton Silayev. They ended up drafting Simishev with their first pick last year, and I think Silayev is pretty similar, though I think a little bit more raw and maybe a little bit more of a better skater. I think Silayev could be really interesting, solid middle pair, physical, skating defenseman. I don't really see much more than that. I don't see a great offensive ceiling, but with Simishev maybe unlocking a little bit more, we'll see where Silayev fits in. But maybe Simishev is that first line of D, and Silayev is the second pair behind him, both as left shot D. We'll see. But I think with what Arizona likes, with that size, with that skating, Silayev checks those boxes, and pretty well at that. Now we go into 7th overall in the Ottawa Senators, and this one's a fascinating pick. To me, I think they will go D, but I've seen a lot of people say they go after a Silayev or a Dickinson, and I'm just here to say they're not going to go for a left-handed D. Not another one. They have too many in the system, but I do think Carter Yakimchuk as a right D fits them pretty well. I think of what Ottawa has drafted recently, even though they kind of rehauled a little bit of that management, I think they're going to go still in the same direction. With Yakimchuk at 6'3", he has great size, but I think the really bread and butter is that power play shooting ability. You can see 30 goals in 66 games with Calgary this year. He just has so much confidence, aggressiveness at the blue line offensively, and he's someone that I think will get a lot of points, and even though it might be a little bit frustrating, kind of like a Thomas Chabot, I think could bring a lot of value on a power play and offensively someday, and I think Ottawa will enjoy that. Next up, we go on 8th overall in the Seattle Kraken, and this is one that I've just had for a very long time, as you guys know, but I see no situation, unless he's drafted ahead of them, where they don't select Zane Parekh. With what they drafted recently in offensive D, upside in their draft picks, Parekh just makes so much sense at number 8. Even though they drafted a lot of offensive D recently, you really only have Ty Nelson on that right side in terms of long-term players, in my opinion. You got Riker Evans, Vince Dunn on that left side, and I think there's a position on that first pair right D for Parekh to slot in as this great offensive, passing, power play quarterback, and Parekh, that's exactly what he'll be for them. Now we're going to go for yet another D inside the top 10, and at 9th overall, even though Tij Iginla isn't there, I still think there are some great options for the Calgary Flames, and I think they'll end up selecting Sam Dickinson, which at number 9 is pretty great, honestly. Pretty good value for what they got in that position, and in terms of bringing talent, bringing potential in the system, I think Sam Dickinson does exactly that. He's yet one of the younger D in this class, being a June birth date, but 6'3", 190 pounds, a great season overall for London, even though there was some rawness, especially in his decision-making, that will be the biggest thing that I think he needs to fix and be a little bit more consistent in going forward. He has great talent with his skating, physicality, the first pass, the transitional ability. I think there is a lot you can unlock in Sam Dickinson, and I think the Flames are going to love the potential in him, as they should. Now I'm going on to the New Jersey Devils, and this is a weird spot for them to be in. I think a Tij Iginla would have fit them perfectly, and even though I could see them maybe reaching for a Liam Greentree or something else perhaps in that range, I think they'll go for a centerman actually in this draft, and I think they're going to go for Berkly Cattojn. I think New Jersey's just going to go for best player available in this spot, like they really should. And I don't think Catton is going to be a player that has to be a center long term. I think he could be pretty versatile, but in terms of pace, in terms of offensive wherewithal, Catton you cannot go wrong with. He's somebody that I was debating between him and Helenius, but I think New Jersey's really going to appreciate the pace in his game, the decision making, the quick moves. He's going to be somebody that could bring a lot for them. And with the Chiefs this year, 116 points in 68 regular season games. I don't think he's going to be immediately a great producer, but give him some time, especially in that New Jersey system, and I think you could get a lot out of this guy. He fits a lot of the players that are already there, and I think he'd be able to get the most out of them. Now we move on to number 11 and go on to the first big surprise, I would say, of my mock draft. And at the Buffalo Sabres position, I think they will end up selecting Adam Jiricek. Now, I was debating them going for a defenseman, but I just don't think anybody on that left side is going to be actually able to play long-term with power, with Dahlin, with players like Byram as well being acquired. I think they would have to go for a right D, and I think Jiricek actually makes a lot of sense for what they could need in the future. Even though he was quite a bit raw in the Czech League this year, he was on the younger side, and I think once he fills out his frame, he's going to be a pretty solid, maybe fourth, fifth physical skating defenseman. In a lot of ways, is kind of a Silayev light, where he doesn't quite have the size of Silayev, but has a lot of the same characteristics, and in some ways, even better habits, in my opinion. And I think Buffalo, even though this will be a major long-term project, I think Jiricek could bring some pretty good value in the future and be a solid D that's dependable and consistent. And they've gone for a lot of high upside picks recently that I think they can afford to go for a high floor player in Jiricek's case. Now at 12th overall in the Philadelphia Flyers, this is also one that I debated a lot between a bunch of different guys, but somebody that I just had a feeling about if he's available at this spot. I don't know. I just think Cole Eiserman will end up being the Flyers pick this time around. I think it just makes a lot of sense for what they could need in the future. You could have Cole Eiserman with a Matvei Michkov on the same line, and those two would be absolutely special together. But I just think with the goal scoring, with the consistency there, with how much he's also a pretty physical player too, he doesn't back down from that aspect of the game, I think Philly's going to really appreciate that. And they aren't afraid to go for players that have a little bit of a reputation, a little bit of character questions, and I feel like Eiserman is a player that you could get a lot of potential out of if you're able to unlock that goal scoring. I think Philly's going to be going for the high potential. They did it in Michkov's case, and I think they'll do it in Eiserman's too. Next up at 13th overall, and even though I think they could have been a team in the race for Berkly Cattojn, I think they're going to go for the next best center available at this spot, and that's going to be Konsta Helenius, who I think could be really interesting in Minnesota's system. I think they're a team that could use some more up front, and with Helenius, he's super smart, super collected. That IQ is really going to drive him to be a solid NHLer, in my opinion. The question is, how much more potential does he have? But I think with the center group coming up, where you would have Helenius, you'd have Marat Demidov, you have Marco Rossi, Charlie Stramel, it gives him a lot of options. And I think Helenius could also be a winger and do pretty well at it too. But the face-off percentages, the consistency at that, and how well he was doing in the Liga, I think the Wild are going to appreciate the pick. And even though it isn't super high upside, I think he'll be an NHLer. And I think that's what Minnesota will want at this spot. At number 14, this was actually the Pittsburgh Penguins spot, but it goes to the San Jose Sharks because of the Erik Karlsson deal. And I think for San Jose, they're going to absolutely go for a D at this position, no doubt. I think they would have liked a Carter Yakimchuk or even Adam Jiricek instead, but I think they will end up going for Zeev Buem. The only reason why I think San Jose might be a little bit hesitant is I think they like to go for more physically mature players. In Buem's case, I think that is the biggest weakness. He's a player that against really strong forechecking, really strong pressure, can sometimes buckle in ways, but I love the skating. I love the offensive potential here, the dangling, the smoothness around the blue line. He's just somebody that I think could be a great power play force and also a great 5-on-5 transitional player. And even though I don't know if he'll be the number one stud that San Jose could really use, I think he'll be a top pair D and one that San Jose will love at 14th overall. At number 15 in the Detroit Red Wings, I think this is a spot that Cole Eiserman would have gone to. Eiserman, I think just makes so much sense. But with him gone, I actually think it's between Beckett Seneca and Liam Greentree. And at this spot, I think they will go for Seneca, just how much he's risen over these past few months. While Liam Greentree's disappointing U18s might push his stock back a little bit. In Seneca's case, the growth over the past year in terms of his height has really exacerbated some of the clunkiness in his game. But he's gotten better in the second half, has been fantastic in the playoffs for Oshawa. And you can see the blend of size, of speed, of skill. He's somebody that's gotten just so much better throughout the season with Oshawa and is somebody that has a pretty good long-term growth plan. And I think with Detroit, with what they're trying to draft, Seneca is a player that might have one of the better potentials out of the last couple of draft picks. And especially on that right side, really they only got Lucas Raymond on that position. Seneca could be a real difference maker. Next up at 16th overall and the last lottery team in the mock draft here, we go on to the St. Louis Blues. And I think they could go for a multitude of different players. I was debating between Jet Lochenko or even a defenseman, maybe like an EJ Emery or Dominic Badinka, but I think the Blues will end up going for Cole Baudouin, who was just great over this last second half for Barrie, as well as Canada at the U18 World Juniors. Played a great role there as just a solid, grindy centerman who was just able to get bigger and bigger minutes throughout the tournament and just be more and more valuable for Canada. I love Cole Baudouin. He just brings such a good intensity, fantastic straight line speed. I think as a center, is going to be one of the better forecheckers to come out of this draft as well. Just brings so much good intensity and speed to his game. I think St. Louis is really going to like that. that. You could have him as a center, but I also think he'd be a great wing. And again, versatility is going to be big in this draft, and St. Louis, I think, is really going to like that a lot. At number 17 in the Washington Capitals, we go on to Norwegian stud Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, who I think will be a great pick at this spot for Washington. In my opinion, he's one of the most NHL-ready players in this draft already. He is on the older side, so that does make sense, but the physical maturity, the shot, the forechecking, the way he's able to get around pressure, use his body in such a good way, Michael Brandsegg-Nygard is just such a mature physical specimen already. Had a great season in the Allsvenskan, got better and better in the second half as well. I thought was great at the World Juniors for Norway and was great on the power play as well for them. He's somebody that I don't think has the biggest potential in the world, but will be a great, probably second line forward that you just get a lot out of on that right wing and is able to produce in a solid, consistent rate throughout his entire career. Next up at number 19 and the New York Islanders in this spot. This one is pretty interesting, but I think the perfect New York Islander at this position is Liam Greentree. Not the greatest skater in the world, and it is a humongous weakness, but man, does he get by. And Greentree is just such a rare player. Even though his U18s were disappointing, I think a lot of that was just because of the big international ice. And when you're in those bigger positions, skating is really a big advantage. Greentree just doesn't have that. But I think in this shorter ice, with the decision making he has, the quick moves, the way he's able to get around pressure physically, Greentree, I think, is somebody I think the Islanders are really going to like, and I think still has a pretty solid floor. Even though that skiing is an issue, with the way he thinks the game, the positioning he has, and the skill set too, I think Greentree is somebody that could become somebody pretty special, and I think the Islanders are 19th overall. This is a pretty good value pick for them, honestly. Sorry, 18th overall, I can't count. And 19th overall is actually the Vegas Golden Knights getting a top 20 pick. Who would have imagined that? But this could be a really good opportunity to really juice that prospect pool because they don't have a lot going forward besides really David Edstrom, in my opinion. But even on the forward side, they're going to go for the best player available. And I think that will be Trevor Connolly. And at 19th overall, getting the skill set in Connolly would be pretty interesting. He's so good and so good in the finesse way. And even though I think he's a little bit of a perimeter player, he's somebody that just is able to connect with his teammates so well. His vision offensively is through the roof. And I think there's a lot of potential offensively there. Even though he makes some boneheaded plays here and there, did so in the gold medal game, I think for Vegas, you could get a lot of value here, and that's what they do best. Next up at 20th overall in the Chicago Blackhawks, this one really depends on who they go for at second overall. If they end up going for a D, then this is a completely different pick. But at 20th, with them selecting Demidov, I think they're going to go for Henry Mews. As a right side D, they don't have a lot of right shot D in the system right now, but in Mews' case, he's one of the smarter D in this class, and really a solid power play quarterback in the future, in my opinion. Not somebody that I think brings a tremendous amount of potential, having a solid season with Ottawa and was pretty good in the U18s for Canada as well. But this is somebody that I think will be a solid middle pair, just smart D that is just calm and collected, knows where to put passes, knows where to make a good move. And in Mews' case, I think there is potential to get better in that category, though I think he'll just be a solid D man at his very best. Now going on to the LA Kings at 21st overall, and this is a fascinating one. They've gone for lower ceiling players over the past couple of years in Jack Hughes and Jacob Dvorak. I think that will stay true in this year's draft, but I think they will go for Tarek Parasak out of the Prince George Cougars, somebody that was just eliminated in the WHL playoffs, unfortunately, but has had an unreal season this year with Prince George. In 68 games, 43 goals, 105 points, 14 points in 12 playoff games. He's going to be a really interesting player to see where he goes on draft day, but I think the intensity, the great play around the net, he just knows where to be, and he's a lot smarter than a lot of players in the WHL, which I think has brought him a long way. Even though I don't think there's tremendous potential offensively, I think a lot of his points are just solid work ethic. I think that's for LA not a bad thing. I think that's something that they'll want to have, likely as a solid forward-checking player in the middle six in the future. I don't see him being much more than a third-line player, but I think he could be a pretty good one. Now at the 22nd overall pick in the Nashville Predators, this is one that I went through probably like 8 different guys in this position, but ultimately, I think they'll end up going for Jet Luchenko out of the Guelph Storm, who I think would be a pretty good pick at this spot. Even though he's on the smaller side at 5'11", 183 pounds, I think he does project as a center long-term because the intensity, the incredible smarts on him. He's such a smart player, always knows where to be, and that's lended to a lot of success this year with Guelph and the U18s as well for Canada. And he's one of the younger players in this draft too, with an August 21st birth date. I think there's a lot of potential here to be a solid middle six center in the future, maybe even a second line guy. And at where Nashville's picking him, that could be pretty good value. Going on to the final pick of the mock draft with the Toronto Maple Leafs here, and recently they've gone for more IQ, smarter players with their first picks in the draft, and I think that will stay true. But I think they'll go for a defenseman with their first pick, and I think it will be EJ Emery. Now, is this the highest upside pick in the world? Absolutely not. But I think EJ Emery provides some great physical traits, a good skating ability that I think Toronto's really going to like, especially with Brad Treliving as well in the fold. I think he'll have a say, and I think EJ Emery has had a pretty solid season, especially at the U18 World Juniors. I thought he impressed impressed quite a bit, especially on a pair of Cole Hutson. Those two were very good, and he was playing his best hockey of the season there. But I think he's a player that, even though doesn't have the greatest offensive potential, isn't going to be scoring you too many goals. I think he could be maybe a 4th D at the next level who just brings solid skating, solid smarts, and is super physical. And I think Toronto will really like to have that type of kid in their system. But that is my top 23 NHL mock draft, and we will obviously update this as we go through the second, third round, all throughout the rounds, because we're gonna have new teams in the mock draft as well into the fold to change things up. But that is how I stand right now after the draft lottery, and I hope you guys enjoyed all the picks, all the predictions, and all the analysis for all these prospects. If you did, make sure with that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell for more videos just like this, and also please comment down below. I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you agree? What do you disagree with? My top 23, and where you see each of these prospects going. Was I dead wrong? Was I completely right? I'd love to know all your thoughts down below, and who you want your team to end up selecting in the end. Of course, I didn't forget about anybody. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that I could have mentioned on this list that just missed: Cole Hutson, Igor Chernyshov, Nikita Artamonov, Andrew Basha, Sasha Boisvert, Michael Hage, Teddy Stiga. So many good players outside of this top 23, but I was trying to go realistic. If this was my rankings, it would be a lot different, but I wanted to go for where I thought each of these guys might go. So I hopefully you guys ended up enjoying all that. Comment all your thoughts down below, and of course, share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Make sure you get the picks out to them, and click on this card for all my 2024 draft content right in one playlist for you to binge watch till your heart's content. And I will see you in the next one. I hope you have a great hockey day, and goodbye.